Commander Elara Dane stood alone on the edge of the research outpost, watching the orange-red horizon of Arendor 7. The wind carried a strange metallic scent, mixed with the faint aroma of the alien plants growing nearby. She adjusted the straps on her utility belt and checked the readings on her scanner. Another calm day. Or at least that's what she hoped. Life on this remote planet had taught her that calm was always temporary. The outpost was quiet, almost too quiet. Her team had rotated back to Earth months ago, leaving Elara in charge of monitoring the planet's climate, wildlife, and any unusual activity. She preferred solitude most of the time. The isolation allowed her to focus, to think, and to work at her own pace. Yet, she had learned long ago that being alone did not mean being safe. It was just past sunrise when she first noticed a tiny shadow at her door. Elara squinted. Her quarters were on the top floor of the outpost, with reinforced metal walls and a heavy door designed to keep the harsh environment out. The shadow was small, so small she almost dismissed it as a trick of the light. But then, a soft knock echoed, barely audible over the whistling wind. Elara froze. She was used to strange things on Arendor 7. Moving plants, flickers in the atmosphere, sudden shifts in gravity. But this was different. She peered through the reinforced window and gasped. A tiny creature, not more than 6 inches tall, stood on the metal platform outside her door. It had glowing, golden eyes that seemed to study her carefully. Its skin shimmered slightly, reflecting the sunlight like a living jewel. Elara stepped back and reached for her communicator, ready to call security or log the sighting. But the creature didn't run or hide. Instead, it raised one tiny hand and knocked again, this time more deliberately. "Hello?" Elara called, her voice firm but curious. What are you?" The tiny alien tilted its head. It didn't speak in any human language she knew. Instead, it made a series of soft, musical chirps. The sound was pleasant, almost like a tiny song. It repeated the gesture, knocking once more on the door, as if insisting she notice it. Elara frowned. She had expected this planet to host dangerous wildlife or uncharted phenomena. She had not expected this. A tiny, intelligent being knocking politely at her door. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "Let's see what you want." She hesitated, then slowly unlocked the door and opened it a crack. The creature looked up at her with unblinking eyes. It was delicate, with limbs that seemed fragile, yet it carried itself with a surprising confidence. In its tiny hands, it held what looked like a small crystal, glowing softly with an inner light. Elara's heart skipped. She crouched slightly to be closer to its level. "Is this a gift?" she asked. The alien chirped again and extended the crystal toward her. Its gestures were precise, careful, almost ceremonial. Curiosity outweighed caution. She reached out and took the crystal. The moment her fingers brushed it, a soft warmth spread through her hand. The crystal hummed lightly, vibrating with a gentle energy that was unfamiliar, but not threatening. Elara looked up at the creature. "You've been here for how long?" she asked, though she knew she wouldn't get a clear answer. The alien tilted its head again, chirping and making small circular motions with its arms. She realized it was trying to communicate in its own way. Days passed, or maybe it was hours. Time seemed different in the presence of this tiny being. Elara named it Kiro, a simple name she could remember and use. At first, she tried to ignore him, focusing on her daily tasks, scanning the planet, logging climate data, and maintaining the outpost. But Kiro had a habit of returning every morning, knocking patiently at her door, always carrying something small, fragments of glowing minerals, strange seeds, or tiny, perfectly crafted tools. Elara was cautious. She had seen enough alien species to know that appearances could be deceiving. But there was something about Cairo's behavior that did not feel dangerous. He was consistent, polite, and incredibly curious about her world. One morning, she decided to take a risk. She opened her door fully and stepped outside, kneeling to meet Cairo eye to eye. He chirped excitedly and handed her a tiny device, no bigger than a coin. It pulsed with soft light and seemed to resonate with the atmosphere. Alara studied it carefully. "What is this?" she asked. Cairo chirped and tapped the device, pointing toward the horizon. Then he made a motion that mimicked walking, then stopping, then scanning the ground. Alara's mind raced. He was showing her something, perhaps a message, perhaps a warning. Days turned into weeks. Cairo never missed a day. He learned to follow her routines, waiting patiently while she finished her scans, helping in ways too small for anyone else to notice, but meaningful nonetheless. He repaired small machines, adjusted delicate instruments, and even helped her decode complex readings from the planet's surface. Alara began to trust him, though she kept her guard up. The outpost's database had records of alien interactions. Many had ended poorly. She knew she had to remain vigilant. Yet she couldn't deny a growing sense of companionship. Cairo's presence, tiny as he was, brought warmth to the long, lonely days. One evening, during a particularly fierce dust storm, Alara found Cairo shivering on the metal platform outside her door. The wind was strong, and the storm threatened to damage the outpost's delicate instruments. Without thinking, she opened the door, scooped him into her hand, and brought him inside. She wrapped him in a small cloth and placed him near the heater. Cairo chirped softly, a sound that seemed almost like gratitude. For the first time, Alara realized that despite his size, he was brave, loyal, and determined. 3 years of knocking, she realized. If his species measured time the way humans did, he had been trying to communicate for far longer than she imagined. She looked at him closely. His tiny hands were worn from constant work, yet his eyes still held the curiosity of someone eager to explore, to understand, to connect. "Why do you keep coming?" she asked gently. Cairo tilted his head, then chirped, tapping her chest lightly, then pointing to himself, then making a circular motion in the air. It was as if he was saying, "I chose you. I've been waiting for you." Alara felt a lump in her throat. She had encountered many species, many dangers, but never had she faced something so small yet so determined. Cairo was not just an alien. He was a symbol of persistence, intelligence, and courage. From that day, a quiet routine began. Alara would step outside each morning to meet Cairo. They communicated in gestures, chirps, and the occasional small device. Though their languages were different, their understanding grew. She learned that even the tiniest beings could hold great wisdom, and even the smallest gestures could carry profound meaning. That night, as the dust storm raged outside, Alara sat by her console with Cairo perched on her shoulder. She looked at the small creature, realizing that this unlikely companion had changed her perspective. She had thought she knew the frontier, its dangers, and its wonders. But Cairo reminded her that the galaxy was full of surprises, and that sometimes the smallest visitor could have the biggest impact. As she watched the storm from the reinforced windows, Alara whispered softly, "All right, Cairo, you can stay. Let's see what you have to teach me." Cairo chirped happily, tapping her hand as if in agreement. And in that moment, a new chapter began, one filled with curiosity, discovery, and a bond that neither size nor species could define. Days passed, and the tiny alien, Cairo, became a regular presence in Commander Alara Dane's life. He was no longer just a visitor knocking on her door. He had become a companion, a puzzle, and slowly a trusted ally. Each morning, without fail, he appeared on her doorstep, carrying small gifts or mysterious devices, chirping in his melodic voice. Alara had learned to interpret his gestures. slowly understanding the logic behind them. Kiro seemed fascinated by her work at the outpost, especially the monitoring of Arendor 7's climate and alien wildlife. He would watch her closely, tapping sensors, pointing at readings, and chirping in patterns that she had begun to recognize as a form of communication. One morning, Ilara opened the door to find Kiro holding something new. It was a tiny, metallic cube, no larger than her palm. Its surface shimmered in soft gold and green lights. He tapped it twice and pointed toward the horizon, then made a motion with his hands as if scanning the terrain. Ilara crouched to inspect it. "This is some kind of scanner, isn't it?" she murmured. The cube hummed lightly in response, as if confirming her guess. Cairo chirped, hopped onto her shoulder, and tapped her chest gently. His golden eyes seemed to shine with pride. She smiled, despite herself. "I see. You want me to use it, don't you?" For the next several hours, Ilara experimented with the cube. It responded to her touch, displaying holographic maps of the surrounding terrain. The device highlighted regions where the soil was unstable, or where unusual energy patterns emerged. Ilara realized that Kiro had brought her a tool that could significantly improve her research. Kiro chirped again and pointed at her instruments, then at the cube, making small circles in the air. She understood immediately. He wanted to help her combine the data from both devices. Over the next few days, they worked together. Kiro's tiny hands manipulated delicate sensors with precision no human could match, while Ilara recorded and analyzed the results. The bond between them grew with each passing day. Kiro had a natural curiosity, a cleverness that often surprised her. When she encountered a problem she could not solve alone, such as calibrating an instrument under the harsh winds of Arendor 7, Kiro found a solution. He tapped the device, then the console, then chirped in a rhythm that seemed almost musical. Ilara followed his instructions as best she could and watched, amazed, as the instrument began functioning perfectly. Other members of the outpost, still communicating from Earth via long-range transmissions, noticed unusual activity. Instruments were showing readings that didn't match previous data, and small anomalies were appearing in the logs. Yet no one could explain why. To them, it seemed as if the planet itself was adjusting to the outpost, as if someone or something was helping from the shadows. Ilara kept Kiro's presence a secret. She knew the implications of revealing him too early. Humans often feared what they did not understand, and she was not willing to let anyone harm the tiny being she had come to trust. Yet she also knew she could not ignore the growing potential of their partnership. Kiro was not merely a companion. He was a being with knowledge and technology far beyond what humans had encountered on Arendor 7. One evening, as the twin suns of the planet set in brilliant hues of red and gold, Ilara sat at her console. Kiro perched on her shoulder. He chirped softly, pointing at the holographic maps. She followed his tiny gestures and realized he was highlighting areas of the planet where life had adapted in unusual ways. Strange fungi, plants that moved like animals, and underground tunnels that seemed to hum with energy. This is incredible," Ilara whispered. "You've been watching this place for a long time, haven't you?" Kiro chirped and nodded, tapping his chest and pointing toward the tunnels. He wanted her to understand the ecosystem, to see the planet not just as a challenge, but as a living, interconnected world. Over the next weeks, Ilara and Kiro explored parts of the planet previously deemed too dangerous. Kiro led her to hidden tunnels, small caves, and areas with alien flora that could provide crucial data for human survival on frontier planets. Though he was tiny, he moved with confidence, guiding her through hazardous areas with intelligence and care. Their relationship became more than researcher and subject. There was a quiet understanding between them, a trust built on shared effort and mutual respect. Kiro's small gestures, bringing her gifts, warning her of dangers, showing her secret paths, were acts of loyalty. Ilara responded with patience, protection, and careful attention. One afternoon, the outpost's sensors detected a sudden spike in energy readings near a nearby cliff. Ilara, with Cairo on her shoulder, approached the area cautiously. The ground beneath them hummed, and small shards of crystal protruded from the rocks, vibrating with unknown energy. Cairo chirped repeatedly, tapping his tiny hand on the crystals. He wanted her to observe, to understand. Ilara knelt beside him, careful not to disturb the fragile formations. "You're showing me something important, aren't you?" she asked softly. Cairo chirped again and pointed at a hidden seam in the rocks, then gestured upward. Ilara examined the seam and realized it led to a small chamber, perfectly preserved and hidden from view. Inside, there were intricate devices, tiny tools, and materials she could not immediately identify. This could change everything," she breathed. She realized that Cairo's species, despite their size, had advanced knowledge that could help humans navigate and survive in the harshest conditions, and they had chosen her to witness it, to learn it, to protect it. Night fell, and the twin moons rose over the horizon, casting silvery light across the alien landscape. Ilara returned to the outpost with Cairo safely tucked inside a protective pouch she had made for him. She set up a small area near her console where he could move freely and interact with her instruments. Cairo chirped softly, hopping from device to device, exploring and observing. Ilara smiled. "You're not just persistent, are you?" she said. "You're clever, loyal, maybe even brave." Cairo chirped happily, tapping her hand. She realized that the tiny alien had not just been knocking for attention. He had been knocking to find someone he could trust, someone who could understand him and work with him. Over the following days, their partnership deepened. Cairo showed her how to harness small energy pulses from the planet's core to power instruments. He taught her patterns in the alien flora and fauna that were previously invisible to human sensors. Ilara, in turn, taught him how to manipulate human devices, how to read her instruments, and how to protect sensitive data. Through these exchanges, Ilara learned an important lesson. Intelligence and courage were not measured by size. Cairo, though tiny, possessed insight, knowledge, and loyalty that many humans lacked. And she, as a human, had the strength, discipline, and foresight to recognize and protect that. By the end of the second part of their story, a quiet understanding had formed between them. Cairo's daily knocks, once a mystery, had become a symbol of persistence, hope, and connection. He had chosen her, not out of necessity, but because he sensed in her a kindred spirit, a human willing to see beyond appearances, willing to trust, and willing to learn. Ilara sat at her console. Cairo perched on the glowing edge of a screen. She watched him study the holographic maps, listening to his soft chirps, and felt a warmth in her chest. She knew the galaxy was full of wonders, dangers, and unknowns, but for the first time she also knew that the smallest beings could have the largest hearts, and that courage and loyalty could come in the most unexpected forms. And so, on the quiet frontier of Arendor 7, two unlikely companions began a journey that would test their wits, their courage, and their trust. The tiny alien and the human commander were no longer simply observer and visitor. They were partners, explorers, and friends, ready to face whatever mysteries and challenges the galaxy had in store. The quiet days at the outpost began to change. Commander Ilara Dane noticed unusual activity in the readings from the external sensors. Small devices had been repaired without explanation, and subtle changes in the data patterns hinted at external interference. Though she suspected Cairo's involvement, she also knew that the outpost crew on Earth would begin to notice these anomalies soon. Ilara glanced at Kiro, perched on the edge of her console, his tiny golden eyes shining with quiet intelligence. "You've been busy," she said softly. Kiro chirped, hopping from one instrument to another, tapping and adjusting with surprising precision. It was clear he had been active during the time she was away, studying the instruments, understanding their purpose, and finding ways to make them more efficient. The following day, Earth's communications team sent an urgent query. They demanded explanations for the strange anomalies appearing in the outpost logs. Ilara hesitated. Revealing Cairo's presence too soon could put him at risk. Humans often feared what they could not understand. She decided to handle the situation cautiously. She replied with technical jargon and vague explanations, attributing the anomalies to natural interference and unknown planetary phenomena. Yet she knew the crew would not be satisfied. If the pattern continued, someone would eventually want to investigate in person. Kiro, sensing the tension, chirped softly, looking up at her. He hopped onto her shoulder, his tiny hands brushing against her uniform in reassurance. Ilara smiled, stroking his small back. "Don't worry, little one. We'll figure this out together." The next day brought an unexpected event. A distant tremor shook the outpost, strong enough to rattle instruments and trigger warning alarms. Ilara rushed outside, Kiro in her pocket, scanning the terrain. She noticed a fissure forming in the ground nearby, the vibrations revealing underground chambers she had not seen before. The area glowed faintly, the colors shifting as if alive. Kiro chirped urgently, hopping from her shoulder to the ground. He pointed toward the fissure and then back at her, tapping her chest. Ilara understood. He wanted her to investigate, but carefully. Together, they approached the edge of the fissure. The ground beneath them pulsed slightly, responding to the energy Kiro had been monitoring for weeks. Ilara lowered herself carefully, peering into the fissure. Inside, she saw intricate alien devices, delicate structures, and patterns of energy she had never encountered. The glowing walls of the chamber reflected the soft light, creating a surreal, almost magical appearance. Kiro chirped again and gestured for her to enter. With a deep breath, Ilara stepped inside. Kiro moved ahead, guiding her along the safest paths. Every step revealed new surprises. Tiny machines that seemed to move with a purpose, crystals that stored energy, and devices that could manipulate the environment in ways she could barely comprehend. It was a hidden world, created by a species so small yet so intelligent that their technology rivaled anything humans had achieved. Ilara crouched to examine a device that pulsed with soft golden light. "What is this?" she whispered. Kiro tapped it lightly and chirped, then pointed at her instruments. He wanted her to understand that the device could integrate with human technology, amplifying readings, stabilizing energy, and even predicting environmental changes. Her mind raced. Kiro's species, the Minari, had survived and thrived on this planet for centuries, hidden from larger civilizations. They were careful, intelligent, and capable of feats humans could barely imagine. And now, they had chosen to reveal themselves to her, through Kiro, their emissary. Suddenly, alarms blared in the outpost. Remote sensors had detected the fissure opening and unusual energy surges. Ilara realized she had little time. If Earth discovered this site too soon, they might send a team without understanding the risks, potentially endangering Kiro and his species. She glanced at the tiny alien who chirped, pointing at her chest and then at the chamber. It was as if he was saying, "We must protect this place." Ilara nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. She had to act quickly. Over the next hours, Ilara worked with Kiro to stabilize the chamber. Using her knowledge of human instruments and his understanding of Minari technology, they created a protective shield, a soft barrier that could prevent the energy from spilling out and alerting outsiders prematurely. Kiro moved swiftly, adjusting delicate crystals and devices, while Ilara coordinated with the outpost's systems to ensure no alarms were triggered unnecessarily. By the time the work was complete, the chamber hummed quietly, safe and stable. Kiro chirped happily, hopping onto her shoulder and brushing against her cheek. Ilara smiled. "You did it, little one." "We did it together." She realized that their teamwork was more than functional. It was a bond built on trust, respect, and mutual understanding. The following day, curiosity got the better of some of the outpost crew members. A small group arrived via remote transport to inspect the anomalies in the equipment. Ilara knew she had to act carefully. She brought them to the site, but kept Kiro hidden in a small protective pouch she had made for him. As the humans examined the area, they marveled at the subtle changes in the instruments. "It's as if the planet itself is maintaining the outpost," one scientist remarked. Ilara nodded, keeping her tone neutral. "Perhaps some unknown natural phenomena," she suggested. Inside, she felt Kiro chirp softly. He had understood her concern and trusted her to protect him. That night, Ilara reviewed the chamber's data with Kiro. She realized the tiny alien had been observing humans, not just for curiosity, but to find someone trustworthy, someone capable of understanding and safeguarding the knowledge of his species. He had chosen her day after day, knock after knock, for 3 years. Ilara's heart swelled. The small creature, so persistent and intelligent, had risked everything to connect with her. It was a reminder that courage and wisdom were not measured by size or appearance. Even the smallest beings could hold immense power, insight, and loyalty. Days later, an unexpected problem arose. A minor landslide had blocked one of the chamber's entrances, and some of the energy devices began to destabilize. Ilara knew she had to act quickly. Kiro chirped urgently, pointing to the affected area. Together, they devised a plan. Using a combination of human tools and Minari technology, they carefully removed the debris. Kiro's tiny hands worked with precision, adjusting delicate mechanisms that Ilara could not handle alone. With patience and skill, they stabilized the chamber once more. Ilara realized that without Kiro, she could never have managed this alone. The tiny alien was not just a companion, he was a partner, an equal in intellect and courage. That evening, as the twin moons of Arendor 7 rose, casting silvery light across the outpost, Ilara reflected on the past weeks. She had learned to communicate with Kiro, to understand his gestures and intentions, and to respect the intelligence of a species humans often overlooked. She realized that humanity's greatest strength lay not in size or force, but in the ability to recognize, respect, and work with beings unlike themselves. Kiro chirped softly, hopping onto her shoulder. Ilara smiled and whispered, "You've taught me a lot, little one, not just about this planet, but about courage, loyalty, and trust." Kiro chirped again, brushing against her cheek in a gesture that felt almost like affection. Ilara knew that their journey was only beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown dangers and incredible opportunities. But together, she and Kiro had discovered that even the smallest beings could change the course of events. They had formed a bond that could survive storms, challenges, and the skepticism of others. For 3 years, Kiro had knocked daily at her door, seeking someone who could understand him. Now, that trust had been rewarded. Ilara realized that the tiny alien's persistence was not just patience, it was wisdom. He had recognized the qualities that made a good ally: intelligence, bravery, and respect for life. As she watched him move around her instruments, adjusting, observing, and learning, she felt a profound sense of hope. The Minari were not just tiny aliens. They were a symbol of the potential that lay in collaboration, understanding, and the courage to embrace the unknown. Ilara whispered softly, "We'll face whatever comes next together, Kiro, and we'll do it wisely and bravely." Cairo chirped, hopping onto her shoulder, ready for whatever challenge the galaxy would send their way. On the remote planet of Arendor 7, a human and a tiny alien had begun to prove that size did not measure strength. The morning sun rose over the red plains of Arendor 7, casting long shadows across the outpost. Commander Ilara Dane stood at her window, watching the horizon, her thoughts filled with the events of the past weeks. The tiny alien Kiro had become an inseparable part of her life. His daily knocks had grown into a partnership that defied logic, and his intelligence had proven far beyond what anyone could have expected. Ilara knew the moment was approaching when she could no longer keep Kiro hidden from the rest of the human crew. The anomalies in the outpost had grown too noticeable. Earth's scientists were sending frequent queries, and the sensors now showed patterns too precise to be dismissed as natural phenomena. The time had come for a revelation. Kiro chirped softly, hopping onto her shoulder. He tapped her chest gently, as if sensing her tension. Ilara smiled and stroked his tiny back. "It's time, little one," she said. "We'll show them who you really are and why we've been working together." Kiro chirped in response, his golden eyes shining with excitement. Ilara gathered the crew in the central hall of the outpost. When they arrived, they were greeted by an unexpected sight. The instruments they had monitored for weeks now displayed incredible data: energy readings, environmental analyses, and predictive maps that no human had yet been able to generate. The crew stared in amazement. "I know you have questions," Ilara began. "These changes are not caused by me, nor by natural phenomena. They are the work of a very special being, someone I've come to know and trust." She reached into her pocket and gently lifted Kiro onto her palm. The tiny alien chirped softly, raising his hands in what seemed like a gesture of greeting. The humans gasped. Kiro was no larger than a hand, yet his presence was commanding. His shimmering skin reflected the light in soft, golden tones, and his golden eyes seemed to hold intelligence far beyond his size. Ilara continued, "This is Kiro, a member of the Minari, a species that has survived on this planet for centuries. They are small, but their technology and knowledge are incredible." One of the scientists stepped forward cautiously. "A tiny alien?" he asked, skepticism clear in his voice. "How is this possible? And why has he been interacting with you alone for so long?" Ilara smiled. "Because he trusted me. Kiro has been knocking at my door for 3 years, every single day, testing, observing, and learning. He chose me because he saw in me the qualities his species values: intelligence, loyalty, and courage." Kiro chirped, tapping her chest and pointing toward the instruments. It was as if he was confirming her words. The crew watched in awe as Kiro moved among the devices, adjusting, tapping, and demonstrating their functions. The tiny alien's abilities were undeniable. Instruments that had failed for weeks now worked perfectly, data flows became clear, and predictive analyses appeared instantly on the holographic displays. Ilara continued, "Kiro has shown me that intelligence is not measured by size, and courage is not measured by strength. Even the smallest beings can make the biggest difference. We have worked together to protect his species' knowledge, to learn from it, and to apply it safely for human use." The crew exchanged glances, slowly realizing the truth. What they had thought was an anomaly, a glitch, or interference was, in fact, the careful work of a being they had underestimated because of his size. Kiro chirped again, hopping onto a nearby table and pointing at a glowing crystal. It pulsed with energy, and the humans watched as the chamber's protective mechanisms activated, stabilizing the environment instantly. One of the junior scientists stepped closer, awe evident in her eyes. "Commander, he's amazing. I've never seen technology like this handled so perfectly by anyone, let alone something so small." Cairo chirped, almost proudly as if he understood her amazement. Ilara nodded. "Exactly. Cairo has risked much to reach out to humans, and he has trusted me to protect him. This is why his daily knocks mattered. Persistence, trust, and courage, these are not human qualities alone. They are universal." As the day passed, the outpost crew began working with Cairo, carefully following Ilara's instructions. They realized that his knowledge and technology could advance human understanding of planetary survival, energy management, and environmental prediction. Cairo guided them patiently, showing how to integrate human instruments with Minari devices, how to read energy patterns, and even how to stabilize hazardous areas safely. By evening, the crew was fully convinced. The skepticism that had lingered dissolved, replaced by admiration and respect. Cairo had proven that even the smallest creature could have the largest impact. Ilara watched as the humans began to treat him not as a curiosity, but as a partner, a teacher, and a friend. That night, as the twin moons rose over the horizon, Ilara and Cairo sat together near the observation window. The planet's surface glowed softly in the moonlight, and the outpost hummed quietly with life. Cairo chirped softly, brushing against her cheek. "You know, little one," Ilara said, "when you first knocked at my door, I had no idea who or what you were. But I've learned so much from you, not just about this planet, but about trust, patience, and courage." Cairo chirped in response, tapping her hand gently. Ilara continued, "I never thought I would find a companion like you here. You've changed my life, Cairo, and I hope we can continue this journey together, exploring the galaxy, learning, and protecting what is important." Cairo chirped again, hopping onto her shoulder, as if to say he agreed completely. The next day, Earth headquarters finally acknowledged the reports from the outpost. Messages of astonishment and admiration poured in. Humans could hardly believe that such a tiny being could wield such intelligence and influence. But Ilara and Cairo had already shown them the truth. The Minari were no longer a mystery, and their partnership with humans was set to become a model for cooperation across species. Ilara addressed the crew and the incoming communications. "This is only the beginning. Cairo and his people have knowledge that can help humans explore and survive in ways we never imagined. But more importantly, he has reminded us that respect, trust, and courage are universal. These qualities transcend size, species, and boundaries." Cairo chirped in agreement, hopping to the console and gesturing toward the holographic maps. The crew followed his motions, learning quickly. Instruments that once seemed incomprehensible now worked smoothly, guided by the tiny alien's careful gestures. Over the next weeks, the outpost flourished. Cairo worked side by side with the humans, teaching, guiding, and assisting. Ilara's leadership combined with Cairo's knowledge allowed them to stabilize unstable areas of the planet, predict hazardous weather patterns, and even discover new resources that could sustain human colonies in harsh environments. Ilara watched him one evening as he adjusted a delicate energy crystal, his tiny fingers moving with extraordinary precision. She smiled, realizing how far they had come. Cairo had not only become indispensable, but also deeply cherished. The tiny alien who had knocked on her door daily for 3 years had grown into a trusted partner and friend. Finally, in a moment that brought warmth to her heart, Ilara picked Cairo up and held him close. "You are more than a visitor, Cairo. You are my friend. My little comrade," she whispered. The words shocked some of the crew, but they smiled as they realized the bond between the human and the tiny alien was real built on years of patience, trust, and courage. Kiro chirped happily, tapping her cheek, and then hopped onto her shoulder. The outpost was quiet for a moment, filled with a sense of peace and understanding. Ilara knew that their partnership would continue to grow, guiding humans and Minari alike as they explored the galaxy together. On the horizon, the twin suns of Arendor 7 set, painting the sky in shades of red, orange, and gold. The outpost, once isolated and lonely, was now alive with activity, hope, and discovery. Ilara looked at Kiro, her tiny friend who had come so far to reach her, and whispered softly, "We've made history together, little one, and the best is still to come." Kiro chirped in response, his tiny form glowing faintly in the evening light. Together, they would face new worlds, unknown dangers, and incredible wonders. The tiny alien's persistence, intelligence, and courage had proven that even the smallest beings could leave the largest impact. Ilara and Kiro's story would become a legend, not because of battles fought or empires conquered, but because of trust, friendship, and the courage to see beyond appearances. In the vast galaxy, it was proof that hearts and minds, no matter how small, could change the future. As the night fell over the outpost, Commander Ilara Dane and Kiro, the tiny alien who had knocked daily for 3 years, sat together by the observation window. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if acknowledging the bond they had formed, a bond that would guide humanity and the Minari into a new era of exploration, understanding, and hope. Persistence could overcome fear, and even the smallest gestures could build bonds strong enough to change the future.